It was exactly midnight, and I was sat in my room watching TV. Suddenly I heard a cough that sounded loud. Now, my bedroom is the window that you can see in the video, so I'm right next to the front door. Anyway, I hear this cough, and it sounded like it was outside, but I didn't really bat an eyelid because my mum was in the room directly behind mine, and she often coughs. When she coughs, I can hear her through the wall. It's not uncommon. I leave it for 5 minutes, and I hear another cough again, which is pretty loud, but I ignore it. I heard my mum leave the room and come into mine. She asked me what was I looking for outside. I was really confused and said I wasn't outside. She then brought up the videos of this guy just stood outside our house for a solid 10 minutes. It's important to know at this point that I live down a long private road that backs onto a nature reserve, so there's trees and bushes surrounding the entire house. The only way to get to my house is from the road, and I live at the very bottom of this road, so he would have had to pass another like 30 or 40 houses to get here. Anyway, we open the door to this guy still standing there, and the conversation goes as follows. My mum: "Can I help you?" Random guy:
Yeah, I'm trying to find my way out, and I thought I'd knock on your door because I saw your lights were on.
"Okay, well, you definitely didn't knock because we would have heard it, so please don't lie to me. How did you get here in the first place?"
I'm just trying to find my way out.
This goes on for a while before we get annoyed because clearly he's making no effort to leave, so we tell him to get lost. My mum: "Well, I'd like you to leave now, please." Random guy starts to walk off around our house, not towards the exit. "No, the exit is over this way."
I know the way out.
A random guy then starts to make his way to our side gate. Remember when I said our house is surrounded by trees and bushes? This gate hasn't been used for the last 17 or so years. It's overgrown like hell. You can't exactly see it unless you know it's there, or you're climbing through the bushes for some reason. As he goes off that way, I head up our driveway, and I go and watch him. Just outside the side gate is our neighbour's house, which has a little section of road that is only outside their house, so when they park cars there nobody minds because it's out of the way. So when I head up to see if he has actually left, surprise surprise, he's still here and is now walking around our neighbour's car. Doesn't seem like a person who wants to find his way out. So again we tell him to leave and point him in the right direction. He heads off up the road, all the while I'm hanging around to make sure he actually leaves this time. I give it a minute and I look down the length of the road to where it splits into a T-junction. I can't see him, then he appears walking from right to left, stops in the light of the streetlight and continues to just stare at me. I pretend to walk off and come back a few seconds later. Again, he's not there, but after a few seconds he's now walking from left to right. He sees me again and yells,
You don't have to keep watching me.
So right now he's walking back and forth along the top of my road. I hide again, give it a couple of minutes and walk up the road to see if he's still there. Nothing. I spend the next 30 minutes or so walking up and down my road to make sure he's gone. I can't find him, so I don't know if he passed out in a bush or what, but that was the last time I saw him. Random creepy guy who was outside my house at midnight, let's not meet. This happened to me about a month ago. For some context, I'm a woman in my mid-20s, and I live alone in a cozy flat in the attic area of an old Victorian building. I live up in the old servants' quarters. The design of the roof hanging over my window and the high driveway walls means that I get some interesting acoustics. During the quiet nighttime, the sounds bounce up from the whole long street, even from out of sight. I can hear the footsteps and conversations of passers-by as crystal clear as if they were in the room with me, yet standing down on the drive you can't hear them at all. It was almost 4 AM and pitch dark outside. I had been finding it hard to sleep properly the last few nights, so I was still up and pottering around in my PJs with the lights on. I had the window cracked and the blinds half open to get some fresh air in. I usually keep them closed if I have a light on at night. You can see right up into them from the street and houses across, which I sadly did not realize for my first couple of months here. However, I was so flustered from not getting to sleep and so desperate for air, I thought everybody else would be snoozing. I had done the same thing for the last 3 or 4 sleepless nights. I had just made some tea and settled down to read a book when I heard my door buzzer ringing. I remember thinking it was odd that I had not heard anybody approaching as I was just sat by my window, but I brushed it off as being sleep deprived. Nobody who visits me ever rings my door buzzer, they call my phone, so I grabbed my phone to check if I had missed something from friends or family. Nope, nothing. I ran to the window to look down at the porch, but unfortunately I could only see the steps leading up to it. The motion sensor light was on, and I could hear a strange scuffling noise, then some thuds. I figured somebody had called the wrong flat by mistake and was probably drunkenly stumbling around. Even with my rational explanation, a strange sense of unease overwhelmed me. I felt on edge after I heard the thuds and turned my lights off so I could gawp through the blinds without being seen. Unfortunately, I couldn't see much. After a few minutes, the noises stopped and the motion sensor light turned off, although I didn't see anybody come back down the steps. I figured I'd either missed them in the dark, or the person they were looking for had let them in. After 20 minutes or so, I relaxed and turned my lamp back on to potter around again. About a minute later, my buzzer rang again. This time, it was ringing repeatedly, as if someone was aggressively holding the button down. I froze and stared at it for a while, unsure what to do. It was starting to get annoying, and I began to worry that it might actually be somebody I know who needs help. Why else would they be ringing my door past 4 in the morning? I plucked up the courage to answer, albeit with a shaky hand. Hello? No reply. I can hear somebody breathing heavily through the phone static. It sounded like a man. Who is this, and what do you want? Again, no reply. Just heavy breathing. I hung up, thinking they'd got the wrong flat or the telecom was playing up again. I stayed by the wall phone for a few moments, staring at it, unsure what to do. The buzzer went off loudly again, and I just about jumped out of my skin as I was so tense. Who is this? Why do you keep calling me? All I can hear is static again. Thinking I was getting knocked down gingered, ding-dong ditched for my US friends across the big pond, I went to hang up the phone again. Just before I did, I could hear a muffled voice, and I whipped the phone back to my ear and demanded to know who it was. Me. What was that? Random man.
Let me in.
Huh? Who are you?
Let me in. Please. Please.
His voice starts breaking into a panic. I'm not letting you in. You haven't said who you are.
There's people coming to get me. They tried to jump me and I ran away. I'm not safe out here. Please, you've got to let me in. Let me in. Help me, please.
Immediately, I noped the fuck out and hung up the wall phone. There was no way I was letting a strange man into my building who wouldn't identify himself, especially as I had to leave the safety of my locked flat to physically go down the front porch to open it. My gut told me that his story was complete bullshit, but on the off chance it was true, I was worried there was about to be a crazy fight on my driveway. I grabbed my mobile phone and dialed 999 as I ran to turn my lights off and shut the blinds again, peeking out through a crack. The man had been ringing my buzzer non-stop since I hung up, but shortly after I turned the lights out it stopped again. The weird shuffling and thumping noises on the porch started up again as I explained the situation to the emergency operator on the phone. She urged me to stay calm and stay on the phone with her, and said that the police were already aware something was happening. Somebody else in my building had called earlier to say that a man had been trying to break into the front door after trying all the ground floor windows down the side and back. They'd had a similar call a few nights before too. That explains the weird noises I kept hearing and why I didn't hear him approach from the street at the front. The noises had now stopped, but I was beginning to panic hard. I asked the lady when the police would arrive. She said that they would send out a unit as soon as one was available. Hooray for recent cuts to police funding. And she told me to stay locked inside. After 10 minutes of no activity outside and the motion light turning off, the lady said to stay in my flat with the door locked. Yeah, like I was going to do anything else. She told me to call back if he reappeared, and that they'd escalate it on their end if he made it into the building, and then she ended the call. I sat by the window watching, and sure enough, a few minutes later the noises started again and the light below came on. I don't think he ever left, or he went down the side to the car park at the back. I still couldn't see what was going on because of the angle from my window. I was about to call the police again when a taxi driver passing by slammed on his brakes and shouted out his window. I stopped to listen. Hey, you! What are you doing out there? I dropped you off on the other side of town an hour ago.
Oh hey, I lost my keys. My friends live here and I'm trying to get hold of them to let me in.
I see the shoulder and leg of the man come round the corner slightly. The taxi driver spoke again. You told me you were going home to sleep it off and wouldn't be causing any more trouble like earlier. I asked you to get out and you begged me to drop you home still, so I did, and now you're not at home. The random man spoke.
I just said I had no keys to get in. I'm trying to stay with my friends. They live here.
You could hear that the man was getting agitated and an edge was creeping into his tone as he lied again. So why are you skulking down the side there making a ruckus instead of ringing the bell? What is going on? What are you really doing? The man gets angry at this and storms down the driveway to confront the taxi driver. This is my first time getting a proper look at him, although I could only see him from behind. He looked like a normal, well-presented young guy with brown hair, black t-shirt, jeans and trainers. I was surprised. Based on his appearance, he would not be somebody I would normally think to avoid late at night. I couldn't really make out what was said next, as they were both shouting over each other, but I could hear the taxi driver yell, "Police!" and the man suddenly leapt towards his car door. The taxi driver quickly screeched off down the road, leaving the man standing there swearing and seething. It was at this point that I realized I had been an idiot, frozen by the window watching this scene unfurl beneath me without calling the police to let them know he was back. I ducked down to pick up my phone, which I must have dropped amid the commotion. As I spoke to a different operator, the man turned around and scrolled down the driveway a little bit, but he seemed to hesitate and stopped, staring up at my building. I tried to get a good look at his face, but it was too dark to make out too much detail. He stood like this for almost 10 minutes, just standing there and staring up at my window, occasionally swaying from side to side. I knew rationally that he couldn't see me peeking out, but I could swear he was staring right at me and knew I was there. He stopped looking at my window and turned to stare at the door for a few moments. I was begging the emergency operator to get the police out here sooner, as I was worried he was going to try the door again. However, I think the confrontation with the taxi driver made him lose his nerve, and he was worried about police showing up. I could hear him make an odd huffing or snorting noise out of frustration as he turned and left my driveway, slowly walking down the street and out of sight. I updated the emergency operator with the direction he headed off in and ended the call. About 10 minutes later, I saw a police car cruise by with its headlights off, heading the way he'd gone. Unsurprisingly, they never found him, as it had been too long and there were too many side streets and alleys around for him to slip away down. He didn't come back again, but I stayed vigilant by that window until sunrise, crying my little eyes out and chain-smoking like hell. I didn't sleep properly for weeks afterwards, and I get extremely paranoid walking to and from my building now. I've stopped taking the bins down if the sun is even slightly setting. Luckily, I had already begun the process to move elsewhere for unrelated reasons, so I only have to live here for a couple more weeks before I move to a big house with friends. I liked living on my own before this, but now I'm very grateful to be losing my privacy to have some backup. Shout out to the brave taxi driver who stopped to confront him. You were far more helpful than the local police, and I don't know if he would have left if you had not scared him off. I wish I could ask you what the hell happened when you met that man earlier in the night. So, strange man trying to trick me into thinking you were in danger so I would let you in, let's never ever meet again. This happened about 17 years ago. I was 13 at the time and I was a latchkey kid. I basically have a set of keys for the house. I'd finish secondary school, make my way home, let myself in, and entertain myself until my parents came home from work. It was one day in the summertime, close to when we would break up for the holidays. I'd let myself in as usual and would go straight to the fridge to grab a drink and snack. Then onto the family computer to listen to the dreaded dial-up tone to log into MSN and chat to my mates. I was chatting with my friends and got a text from my mum saying my dad was on his way to pick her up from work and they were just nipping shops to grab a few things. This basically meant they would be doing an impromptu big shop and I'd inevitably be called out to help bring the bags in. An hour passed and I hear my mum's distinct voice at the front door yelling my name. I put my shoes on and got to the door. I saw my dad's piece of shit red Ford Fiesta with no suspension full to the brim with bags. I grabbed about 5 and ran them into the kitchen, fingers having gone numb from the weight I'd attempted. When I walked back to the front door, there was a random woman stood there holding a 6-pointer of milk pops in her hand. She takes her shoes off and sits on the stairs. My mum and dad are bringing in the last bags, and I'm like, who's this? My mum said, she offered to help. I said no, but she took the milk and walked in. Mum, you can go now, thanks for the help. Druggy, I'm not going. I helped you out. I think I should be paid for the help. We all sort of looked at each other like, what? Mum, no fucking chance, get out of my house. Druggy, no, I need some money for the work I've done. It was heavy. Mum, I didn't fucking ask for your help, so get out of my fucking house. Druggy, make me. My mum saw red. She grabbed her by the collar and threw her straight out of the open front door. Mum, get the fuck out of my house, you bitch. This crazy off-her-face lady then spent the next hour shouting that my mum was a bitch outside before stumbling off into the main road to start a fight with a bus. So yeah, crazy drugged up lady, well, let's not meet again. This is a story my mum told me from when I was only 2 years old. My family has a small acreage in the Canadian prairies. It's not too far out from the city, but far enough that it was very rare to have unexpected visitors. At the time, we had some sheep and chickens, but it wasn't a huge farm. It was just my mum, my dad, my sister, and I. My sister was 5 years older than me, so 7 at the time. We also had a sweet dog named Maggie. My parents have always said she was the best farm dog we ever had. She was some sort of Bouvier cross with shaggy black hair and was very sweet with animals and kids. She also never barked or got upset without a very good reason, much unlike our last pup who, bless her soul, would bark at the wind. My dad was out of town this particular night, probably visiting my grandpa in his town down south. My mum was alone with just us little kids, and Maggie was sleeping soundly in the porch. My mum woke up in the middle of the night to Maggie growling. My mum's a pretty light sleeper, so it doesn't take much to wake her up, but this was very unusual behaviour for our pup. My mum thought it was probably an animal, so she took a peek outside. Sometimes coyotes or large bucks would upset Maggie, so that was the most likely explanation. However, this wasn't the case that night. Our farm is right adjacent to the highway, and there is a long, unlit lane that leads into our yard. It wasn't obvious at first, but my mum saw a dark vehicle slowly creeping down the lane. The car's headlights were shut off, and we didn't have a lot of light in the yard. My mum's stomach immediately sank. Anyone with good intentions wouldn't shut off their headlights. She also had 2 little kids in the house that she had to protect. She watched them slowly creep into the yard. I don't know how many there were, but at least a couple of guys got out of the vehicle and headed towards the shop where my dad keeps his tools, tractor, etc. At the time, there was a big power panel on the side that controlled all the electricity to the yard lights in the house. They opened it and started to go through it, obviously trying to figure out how to shut off the power. God knows what their intentions were. Luckily, my family has a hunting rifle, and my mum grew up on a farm, so she knows her way around a gun. Rifle in hand, she quietly propped open the door just enough to stick the barrel out. She fired a few warning shots in the guy's direction. They freaked out and hopped back in their vehicle, reversing all the way down the lane so she couldn't see their license plate. I honestly have no idea what these guys' plans were. Maybe just to rob us, but the idea of people pulling into the yard with no headlights and shutting off the power is very unsettling. Either way, I'm extremely grateful for our sweet Maggie and badass mum for keeping us safe. It's been 21 years since this happened, but I sure hope we don't meet those guys again. I was at home alone in my previous apartment in a not-so-great neighbourhood. My apartment was on the ground level, and my bedroom window faced a back alley. A dumpster sat less than 2 car lengths away from my window, and homeless people often rummaged there. Just before dawn one morning, I heard a tapping at my window. My back was to the window, and my eyes were wide open now. It was still dark outside. I slept with my lamp on, and my worn-out vertical blinds were missing a slat, causing a 6-inch gap. So I knew that whoever or whatever the source of the tapping was could see me lying in bed as plain as day. The tapping was brief, maybe 5 or 6 more taps, so I spent the next 5 seconds or so frozen, bizarrely trying to convince myself it was something or anything else but a person watching me and tapping on the window, maybe an animal? But then came more tapping. Now, I was faced with the terrifying reality that someone had been watching me through my window in the dark for God knows how long, and he'd decided to tap on the window. Had one of the homeless people become aggressive during their dumpster dive? Something told me that nothing good could come from me turning around and looking at the window. If he got to look at my face, what then? Remember, my back was still to the guy, so I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes and pretending I was too groggy to hear him. I stood up and, hazily, made my way out of my bedroom as though I were going to the restroom or something. Once I was out of his sight, I ran to the phone to dial 911. I considered whether to forget any embarrassment of being in my t-shirt and underwear and bolt out of my front door, which was out of sight from the intruder. I just wasn't sure if I could outrun whoever it was, or whether anyone would help me if I couldn't. Before I could make a decision, I heard the loud pop of my window being pried open. I thought my heart would jump from my chest. At the same time, I could hear my upstairs neighbour Mike descending his stairs. I opened my door a few inches and peeked out to ask for his help. Mike was a big guy, and I'd heard he was trained in martial arts of some sort. He didn't hesitate to respond, hustling to the back of my apartment to see what was going on. Within a few seconds, I heard rumbling and someone being thrown against the wall and into the bushes. A few moments later, Mike came around to my front door, telling me not to worry about seeing that guy again. He'd beaten him up pretty badly. I wanted to believe Mike, that the would-be intruder was maybe dumpster diving, but that he would hopefully never venture this way again. But it wasn't a homeless person. According to Mike, when the guy escaped, he ran to the front of the building, hopped into a red sports car, and sped off. My neighbourhood definitely wasn't a red sports car kind of place. The police later told me that the intruder was likely someone who'd seen me out somewhere and followed me home to find out where I lived. So, Mr. Window Tapper, I still wonder what you would have done if you'd gotten inside before Mike caught you. I wonder if you still follow me, and because of that, I often find myself wishing that Mike had put an end to you. If you found out where I live now, let's never meet.